Welcome to the Blueprint Breakers podcast. If you're done living by the traditional script or you're starting to question it, you're in the right place. This is where we talk about what comes next: pre-retirement, life design, reclaiming your time, your energy, and your freedom. Real conversations, real stories, real connection for women in midlife and beyond who are ready for a different kind of next chapter. My name is Amy Palmer. I am your host and facilitator for these conversations. To stay connected and find your people, come join us at community.blueprintbreakers.com. Every time I have a conversation with Lizzie Merritt, I walk away feeling empowered, strong, just feeling like I could conquer anything, especially any weight management struggles that I may be facing, which is one of the many reasons why I have invited Lizzie back to Blueprint Breakers for us to have a conversation about her latest book. Lizzie is a certified life coach, and she's author of Light, the New Psychology of Weight Loss. And what I love about her approach is that it's not just another conversation about like willpower and motivation and being perfect or trying harder. We talk about the realness. We talk about the connection between stress, the nervous system, emotional eating, shame, motivation, and probably the biggest thing, like why so many smart, capable women know exactly what to do, but still feel stuck sometimes. And honestly, there were moments in this conversation where I just felt very seen personally, especially around the whole I know what to do, so why am I not doing it experience that I know so many of us have. So we'll cover a lot of ground, and I know that you are going to continue to love Lizzie as much as I do. Enjoy the conversation. Hello, Lizzie. Welcome back to Blueprint Breakers.
Amy, thank you. I am so delighted to be here again and to see you again and just to get a chance to talk about all the things.
Yes. Now, when we last spoke last year for our previous episode together, I knew that this new book was in the works. And so I knew that once it sort of was birthed out to the world, I would want to hear and learn all the things about it. So I'm so glad that you're joining us here today. But I'm curious to know what made you decide to write this next book?
Yeah, thank you for asking. And it is funny, I remember so clearly us talking before, and that was really in a time where I was editing and just like I felt so impatient to get the book out into the world into people's hands. And so it's really such a relief that it is now out in the world and people can read it. But to your question, so I wrote my first book, You Are a Miracle, and it published in 2022. And I never thought I was going to write a book at all. And so just to have the one, I was like, great, check that box, done. And then in the intervening time, of course, you have more thoughts and all of that still applies. But I really began to come to appreciate and recognize the role of our nervous system in weight loss, in any kind of goal, but obviously weight loss. And I really do think that weight loss is in a unique category of goal setting on its own because it's really tied to our identity and who we see ourselves or how we see ourselves. And the consequence of quote unquote failure is really painful. And so I wanted to figure out a way to help shift the perspective and the lens that we come at weight loss with so that we can, number one, create safety in the nervous system, let the nervous system feel like, all right, this is a safe thing to try. We can turn down the temperature on how scary failure feels. And then once we can do that, then we can be like, oh, how can I learn and iterate and figure out a pathway and a program that works, not even a program, like a framework that works for my one-of-a-kind unique life rather than a diet, which is like, just follow these things. And if you can't, well, too bad for you.
Right.
Yeah.
I wonder if some of it, well, I'll ask you instead of wondering. I would think that it sort of also might have come out of the coaching that you've been doing since the first book and with all the various women that you've been working with and serving and stuff. I bet that's what made you also spark the idea of going a little deeper with the nervous system.
Absolutely, because I love the women that I coach with. And these are smart women, they are capable, you know,
Mhm.
women can take over the world if we wanted to. And yet so many of us are like, I can do the things except this thing, except weight loss. Why is it that I can know what to do and still not do it? And I was like, I really want to know the answer. And that's how I began to really begin to appreciate the role and the importance of the nervous system. And, once I realized that we can have lots of knowledge, which is in, of course, our prefrontal cortex, our knowing, but if the survival part of our brain is feeling freaked out and it's not safe, or I need a way to de-stress and I'm feeling in a fight or flight, then the communication lines are broken. Like it doesn't matter if I know what to do. If I'm feeling in a fight or flight moment, my survival brain is like, food's going to fix this. And
Right.
so that's where I was like, yeah, we need a better way.
Yeah. Well, and that jumped out at me in the book. I mean, I was like, "Oh, she's talking to me." When you're talking about you know what to do, but you don't do it, and why is that? I know that's come up for me again and again and again, and really trying to, figure that piece out. So, can we go a little bit more into that piece, a little more of the why behind it?
Absolutely. And I think just on the surface, you know, again, smart women, capable women, they're like, you give me a
Yeah.
plan, I can follow it.
Yeah.
And that's where diets really do us wrong, in that they give us a plan. And when it is inevitably difficult to follow it because of, oh, by the way, life, we feel like I'm the problem. And so instead of figuring out like, oh, this is really normal and here's what's going on underneath the surface, we think, you know, I just need to try harder. I need to be better. I need to do more. And we muscle it more, which
Right.
creates more, more lack of safety, more tension inside the
Tension.
brain and the nervous system.
Mhm.
Whereas what we really need to do is peel back some layers and recognize that the communication lines are not connecting. Again, that knowing what to do, in the book, I break it down between this, our brains is formed in layers. So we've got the survival brain, which is often called the lizard brain, and then the emotional brain, which is often called the mammal kind of area of our brain, and then the intellectual part of our brain, which is often called the primate brain. And I was like, I like to make my writing kind of fun and quirky. So it was like, what are three animals that start with L? So a lizard, a Labrador, and a lemur. A lemur is a monkey. And
Yeah.
so it's like, oh, perfect. So basically, the lemur, the primate, the monkey part of your brain is where we think, where we know all of those rules of what to do. But
Mhm.
the lizard is where fight or flight lives. And
Yep.
if you're stressed, if you've had a really long day, then the lizard is the one in charge.
Mhm.
Or the mammal part of your brain, if you're feeling, a lack of connection and you just need some comfort, that's where emotions come in. And so it's the end of the day and I just want to feel some comfort. And that Labrador part of your brain is like, I could care less about what I know to do. I want to feel comfort. Where are the snacks? And
Mhm.
so once you can understand that it's not your fault, it is simply your brain trying to meet your needs, then you can be like, oh, I'm not such a mess. It's just my brain. How do I work with it rather than continuing to pound myself over the head with, just do better kinds
Right.
of things.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I love that analogy. That really jumped out at me. And also the connection to motivation, because I know that for me, and apparently from what I read in your book, lots of people, the motivation just goes out the window when you're stressed, or when have a lot going on, or a really tough day, or whatever. So I was always in the habit of just saying, I struggle with motivation,
Mhm.
and that as a concept, and taking on that blame myself. So how would you suggest that we sort of reframe it once we know the whole fight or flight and the lizard, and once we understand all of that, where do we take it next?
Yeah, great question. And to speak to the question about motivation, motivation is a feeling, it's an emotion. And so just like feeling angry or happy or bored, it's going to be fleeting, and so it's a pretty flimsy foundation to base your weight loss on. And
Mhm.
so I would say, number one, our bodies are miraculous and so good at keeping us safe. And when you are feeling stressed, fight or flight, that your brain wants to keep you safe. And so the motivation to feel like I want to do something is going to go away. It's going to shut down because your brain is really focused on keeping you safe and not so focused on, going out and hunting berries, talking to the survival brain. So that's why it's very normal that under the just normal average everyday stresses of life, not to mention the extra stuff, that motivation is going to come and go. And it's hard to just sort of like kick yourself into gear and be like, I need to be more motivated. That's not something to rely on.
Right.
But to your question, okay, I get the idea. I've got my lizard, Labrador, lemur. I need to create safety. What do I do now? And that is a great question, because I used to, I knew all of these sort of mind body tools for a long time. And I was like, those are so nice and cute and good for those, people that do yoga and meditation, but I'm not actually going to do them. Like, I'm too busy. Until I realized that this isn't just a nice thing. This isn't just a like be more calm and present thing. It's a literal science thing, that when your body is in a state of stress and fight or flight, again, in its miraculous, amazing wisdom, your body diverts oxygenated blood away from long-term things like your brain or digestion, and it moves it to your heart, muscles, and lungs so you can run away from the threat, which means you literally do not have as much oxygenated blood in your brain. You don't have access to the thinking of like, a cupcake's not a great idea right now because I have, a wedding I want to go to in 3 weeks. Your brain doesn't have access to that thinking. And so if you understand that 80% of our nervous system is below the neck, once you're in that stressed state, the reaction is in your body. It's not in your head. And so you cannot think your way out of a stress response. And I like to use the analogy that our bodies are like a wonderful animal. I have dogs and cats, but we'll go with dogs because they're the sweet ones. Our cats can be sweet too, but in general. So in the book, I talk about my rescue dog, Mrs. O'Leary. And she is so sweet and so loyal and usually pretty chill, except when there's fireworks. So fireworks come along and she's freaking out. She's in the corner of the bathroom. And I can logic her and tell her, you're safe. They're outside. You're not going to hurt you. She's not going to get it. She's an animal. And our bodies are very similar. Our bodies have amazing instincts and really not great communication skills. And so you can logic your way into being like, I shouldn't be stressed about this, or I shouldn't be angry. So-and-so already apologized. It doesn't matter. Your body is having the response it's having. And so just like you would sit down on the floor and soothe Mrs. O'Leary with, soft words and petting and just really gentleness, you can treat your body the same way, like a lovely, intelligent, not very communicative animal that you can put your hand on your heart. You can do some breathing. And so in the book, I've got a bunch of different mind body tools that take like 30 seconds, max of 2 minutes, to just let your body know, hey, it's okay. We are safe in this moment. No one is coming at us with a knife. Just like you can comfort a dog that is afraid of fireworks, that I know you're scared. You are physically safe. Let me help you understand that.
I think that helps a lot of us, especially those of us who are in our heads a lot of the time. The fact that you frame that as, it's not just like woo woo, warm and fuzzy, self-care, blah, blah.
Right.
That it's actually research back, science-based ways to regulate your nervous system. So, that really,
and
really
why it's important to regulate your nervous system instead of just being like, whatever, I live on coffee and caffeine and stress. Like I can totally do that. Yeah. But you're literally taking away resources from your brain. Like you're literally dumber when you're stressed, simply because your brain just doesn't have that blood. It's in your muscles.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'd love to really dig into the framework that you present in the book, the light framework. So can you walk us through that, the concept behind it?
1,000%. So as I mentioned before, diets, they give you some steps. They give you what to do, what not to do. And they say, good luck. And as high achieving, go getter, slightly perhaps perfectionist women, we're like, I'm going to get it right. I know how to do this. I'm going to follow the steps. And then there's no plan for when we don't get it right. And so I wanted a method that could help somebody take away that fear of failure, take away that intensity, and come at it from a lens of like, this is a learning process. This is not a get it right or get it wrong. This is how am I going to learn and adjust and grow? Because weight loss is a skill. And just like basketball is a skill, it is something you can learn. Just like playing the piano is a skill, it is something you can learn. And weight loss is something you can learn. However, it's really hard to learn if the stakes are super high. If you just think about a child in a kindergarten class, if they got their wrist smacked with a ruler every time they got something wrong, it's going to be hard to learn because they're in that state of fight or flight. And that's what diets do to us. So I created the LIGHT process as effectively the scientific method applied to weight loss. And LIGHT is a 5-step process and acronym to help you look at weight loss through the lens of the scientific method and curiosity. So L is learn with a beginner's mind, because it's really hard to learn when you already know. And we're like, I know what to do. I'm like, but is it working? So like maybe we could be open to learning that, oh yeah, these mind body tools do matter. Or, oh, hey, I tend to eat first thing when I get home from work. I wonder why. What is my nervous system trying to solve for in those moments? So learn with a beginner's mind. I is investigate with curiosity. Curiosity for the win, because there's so much judgment that comes along with traditional weight loss methods that I didn't do it right. And then we judge ourselves as the problem. And judgment shuts down learning. It's very hard to learn when you're judging yourself. So be open and curious. Just like I said, I eat when I come home from work at night. I'm curious. I wonder why, as opposed to, dang it, I did it again. So you gotta stay open with curiosity.
And the curiosity like makes it more objective, I think, too. Like when you said you're trying to take the judgment out of it. So I love that. I love coming at it with the curiosity.
Yes.
So that's sorry to.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, and to your point about makes it more objective, that leads right into G, which is gather data. So in a science experiment, you're always observing and you're gathering data, and the data is not good or bad. It's information. And so if I consistently eat as soon as I walk in the door after work, that is not good or bad. That is information. And then I can get curious about that. What is this information telling me? Rather than just being like, dang it, again, without that judgment. And then H, which may be my favorite letter, is harness your results. Because so often in weight loss, we look at a mistake, at an overeat, at a binge, and we think of that as failure. And I want to say that those perceived failures are not failure. They're not mistakes. They're not even stumbling blocks. They are the very important, very essential stepping stones to your ultimate success, but you got to harness them. If you just look at them as mistakes, they become a reason to judge yourself. Whereas if you look at them as a stepping stone, what can I learn from that? What is that teaching me? And how can I iterate and change along the way? They become the thing that creates your ultimate success. So mistakes are a beautiful opportunity to make progress, but you got to look at it that way. And then T stands for tend your garden, because so much of weight loss is like running a race with a finish line. And we get there and we're like, yay, now what? But life is not like that. And life is constantly changing. And there will be times where, whether it's the seasons of the year, in the summertime, we're going to barbecues. In the wintertime, we're going to Christmas parties. And so you got to adjust and, be flexible for the different seasons of the year. There are different seasons of life, whether you are taking care of aging parents, or you're, taking care of little kids, or you're in an intense job season. So you got to be able to be flexible for the different seasons of life. And that's why I use the analogy of tending a garden, because you never think about being finished with a garden. Like, it's something you tend, you nurture. It's a practice, like practicing yoga. You don't win yoga, you practice. And that's what your relationship with your body and your nutrition and your weight loss is like. It is a practice. There is no day where I am ever expecting to just never think about food. Like I will always be thinking about it, but in a way that supports me rather than a like, ugh, what a drag sort of thought.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I definitely have really jumped into a lot of aspects of that framework, whether it was when I was working with you
Mhm.
or currently with reading the book and listening to the book. And I'm curious how, like, looking at sort of what we traditionally think of as the diet side of diet. So, in terms of like, what do we eat and how much do we eat? Like, how does the light framework apply to some of the more traditional questions around how do I lose this weight?
Sure. So it's traditional diets. They'll tell you what to eat and how much. So let's talk about what to eat. Um, Hypothetically, you're doing Whole 30 or something like that. And so it's like, I shouldn't be having pizza on Friday night. And my philosophy is, first of all, is having pizza on Friday nights part of a lifestyle that you want to enjoy? This is your life. You get to choose it, but let's investigate with curiosity. So, for example, if I have pizza every Friday night, I can gather data that the scale goes up a pound and a half predictably on Saturday mornings. Okay, that's information. All right. So, if I am at a weight that is higher than I want to be, how can I iterate? Well, maybe I could have pizza every other Friday instead of every Friday. Let's experiment. Or maybe I could have a side salad and 2 slices of pizza instead of 4. Let's experiment. Let's see what happens. There's also the gathering data about how does this food impact my body. Like I have a long history with pizza where I could put away some pizza slices, and it was every Friday night. Pizza night, looked forward to it. Woohoo! And I began to notice I did not feel awesome afterwards. And I remember vividly telling my husband, like, I think I need to break up with pizza. And he was like, good luck with that. And it took a long time, about 6 or 7 years, but of just being curious and experimenting with how do I feel? Is the taste of this pizza amazing enough for the feeling of a brick in my stomach, 3 hours later and not sleeping well?
Mhm.
Is it yes or no? How does it taste? What if I try a salad? What if I try it a little bit less frequently? And so I just took down the kind of internal volume on like pizza is so good. And I was like, well, how good is it compared to how I feel later? And just gathering data about it. So that's kind of a way that you could take the light method to both a what to eat and also how much. So again, when I talked about, I let's say hypothetically, I predictably eat pizza every Friday night and the scale is up a pound and a half. Well, maybe I could experiment with eating a little less and see what happens. Another great example for that is growing up, I always, we were taught that dinner is a protein, a carbohydrate, and a vegetable. So you got a chicken breast, some broccoli, and some rice. And I was stalled at my weight. And I was like, I wonder if I need this much food. And instead of being like, I have to cut back, which is very diet thinking,
Mhm.
I came about it with the thought of like, I wonder how I would feel if I had less. So I had less rice. I had 3/4 of a chicken breast. I was like, let's just see what happens. Let's see how I feel. Will I miss it? And tried it, ate, and was like, I'm actually fine. Scale moved a little bit and then stalled again. I was like, how much do I need? And so over time, I would begin to just experiment like, do I actually need as much food as my brain thinks I need? Or even as much as my brain wants. And if my body doesn't need more food than my brain wants, then what is my brain getting from the food? And so it's all just about asking curious questions rather than shoulds and rules and I have tos and I don't get tos and things like that.
Mm. And trying to figure out what is that need that the brain is trying to fill. If it's not actual hunger, then
Right.
there's something else going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is very, very normal
Yeah.
because we have demanding lives that are stressful and busy, and nobody ever taught us how to feel our feelings. In fact, most of us were taught to push our way our feelings. And so those feelings got to go somewhere. And our brain has learned that food is a great way to smother feelings.
Yeah.
So that can be a really common reason why we want to eat more when our brains want more, even our bodies have had enough.
Yeah. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't ask about GLP-1s
Oh
because
yeah.
they're so prevalent. I have very mixed feelings about that for myself. I mean, I don't have any judgment around it for people, but I'm curious if you have any thoughts on how this works alongside something like that.
Yeah. I think GLP-1s are a fabulous tool. They are so helpful at making the real work of weight loss more accessible.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is the real work of weight loss is changing how you think, is adjusting your relationship to food. So a minute ago, we were talking about many of us use food to muffle our feelings. And a GLP-1 can help you turn down that volume a little bit and then do the real work so that urgency is a little lower. And now I have a little bit more space to be like, my brain thinks I should have food right now, but my body's fine. So why do I need food? And then it just opens up the aperture to be able to ask those questions, and it turns down the urgency. But that real work of weight loss is still has to be done,
Yeah.
which is, why am I using food to muffle my feelings? What is so scary about feeling feelings? And no joke, nobody ever taught us that. Feelings feel very scary. We were taught to push them away, don't cry, etc. And so that is kind of the real work that helps long-term weight loss last. And I love GLP-1s to make that real work more accessible. But that's the thing. GLP-1s are a tool. They are not a fix. And so if you don't take the time to do that mental work of what is the relationship I have with food and why,
Hmm.
then you can overeat on GLP-1s. You can take GLP-1s for a little while and come off of them and regain the weight. And so that's kind of my feelings in a nutshell. So they're amazing, and the real work still needs to be done.
Okay. So if you try to use it as a shortcut, it's not it's not going to help in the long run. It's not going to have that effect.
I mean, it would act like any other diet, which is I lost the weight and I gained it back.
Yeah.
And because that's the thing, the very nature of a diet is it's temporary. And so I tell my clients, don't diet. I don't ever want you to diet again. Because if you're not on a diet, there's nothing to quit. So what I want you to do is look at, how do you relate to food? What does normal look like for you when you're not on a diet? And then let's make little adjustments and tweaks along the way. And when an obstacle comes up, like I had a fight with my spouse and I overate around it, I'd be like, this is fantastic. Of course, my clients are like, it's not fantastic at all. I'm like, no, it's good, because this gives us so much opportunity to work with. Your brain thought that food was a great way to escape the pain you were feeling from that disagreement with your spouse. But what's interesting is food doesn't fix the disagreement. It's just a way to escape it. So what's the story you're telling yourself? What's so scary about the feelings? How can we unravel this onion here? And so that's kind of the real work that we can get into that's underneath the surface.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, as most of us as midlife women, this is not the first, for most of us, it's not been the first time that we've been working on losing weight, managing weight. Many of us have been doing it probably since younger than we should have in some cases. Yeah. And then there are some who this is a very recent thing. It's a recent gain for them. But I'm talking more about the ones that have been at this for a really long time and have had several journeys and experiences with it. Not that I'm talking about myself at all, but sometimes I have the tendency of, when I'm in it, I am in it. Like I can work on, regulating my nervous system. I can work on my behaviors. I can pull things out of my toolbox as I need it. I can make my plan, and it's very successful, very effective. And I feel wonderful when I do that. Right.
Right.
And then life throws you a curveball. Something happens, something just blows up your regular life, and you kind of get sort of knocked off your game. And this applies to a lot of things. I've heard this from people about like working out regularly or whatever. It's when you get knocked off your game and you've been sort of off it for a while, how do you get back on the horse? And is there a way to use the light framework to kind of like give you that boost to get back into it?
Yeah, great question. And so common, so common. So a couple of tools I'd offer you is when you are feeling in the groove, capture data. What is it? And give me 2, max of 3 actions that are helping make things work. So for example, I call these like domino actions that like, if I do this, other things become easier. And so for me, I only have 2. It is sleep. If I sleep well, I am much more likely to be able to make a better decision tomorrow. I'm much more likely to be able to convince myself to exercise. So sleep is one of my domino habits. My other domino habit is planning what's for dinner. I don't need to worry about breakfast. I don't need to worry about lunch. Most people are like, I'm great with breakfast. It's just dinner. Dinner's the only thing I need to plan. And if I can plan it out for the weekdays, I'm basically doing future Lizzie a favor because I hate deciding. So instead of having to decide every night of the week, I decide once for the whole week. And I'm like, great, just follow the plan. And sure, there are days where I don't feel like following the plan, but it's easier in the moment where it's like, it's easier to follow a plan that's made rather than to create a new one when you're tired. So everyone's, 3-step, 2 to 3-step process is a little bit different, so customize it to you. But when things are going right, create your back to normal plan. And I very intentionally said the word normal and not back on track, because again, don't diet. On track, off track suggests a temporary thing. Whereas normal is like, well, this is how I am.
Right.
And it's a lot less energy to just get back to normal than it is to get back on track. And so how you think really matters. It makes a difference. But then let's say you have been off of your normal or your ideal normal for some time and you feel just, rudderless. I would encourage you to take the tiniest steps possible and the not good enough steps. For example, I was coaching somebody recently who wanted to walk for 10 minutes and she was really struggling to get herself out of bed. And as we talked through it, I was like, why? And there's the natural things that like bed is very comfortable. It's hard to convince yourself to get out of bed when it's cold outside. But also there was the thought of like 10 minutes is not going to matter. It's not going to make a difference. And I said, okay, I'm not going to disagree with you in that a 10-minute walk is maybe not going to produce tangible weight loss this week, this month, etc. But what happens with your day when you do get up and walk for 10 minutes? How do you feel about yourself? And she's like, well, I definitely feel better. I've done something for myself. And so then that makes following my plan a little bit easier. That makes the healthier decisions easier and so forth. I was like, great. What about when you don't do it, when you sleep in? She's like, oh, the negative self-talk is just, loud and proud before I'm even out of bed. And I was like, okay, and how does that impact your day? What's the waterfall effect of that? She's like, well, then I tend to be like, oh, screw it by lunchtime and the whole day kind of goes off the rails. So when you are in a funk and, the advice is like, just do the smallest step and your brain very predictably wants to say, that's not good enough. Number one, expect that thought. It's not good enough. And be like, all right, no big deal. Sure, it may not feel good enough, but the waterfall effects from doing a little has a positive flywheel impact. And conversely, the waterfall effects of doing nothing has a negative flywheel effect. So doing the not good enough step creates progress through the flywheel. And so that's how I would encourage you to baby step your way by creating nervous system safety towards getting back to your normal.
Normal. Yes.
Right.
I like that. I like that reframe. Yes. And that I still rely on the tool that you suggested to me with the 10 minutes, if nothing else fails, getting in that 10 minutes of intentional movement. And it makes a huge difference.
It's crazy. I used it with my daughter this morning. She didn't want to go to school and she's got AP exams coming up. And I was like, honey, I know you're not going to like this, but like moving your body helps. And so she did a little something. And I was like, on a scale of 1 to 10, where were you before? She was like a 2. I'm like, where are you now? She's like a 7. It's like, she did just a couple of things. It took her like 3 minutes. And it just was like, I did something for myself. I feel better. And just that has the flywheel
Mhm.
effect.
Love it. So I love the fact I have the audio version of Light, and it's actually Light, the New Psychology of Weight Loss, your latest book. So I have the audio version, which I love because it's like each chapter is like a coaching session with you. And then I have the Kindle version so that I can like highlight things and
Uh-huh.
have it like it, because I'm both a visual and a auditory learner. So I love like having that experience. And plus you also link to some other resources too to use through this whole thing, which is
Yeah.
wonderful. I'd love to hear about the book. I'd like to hear when you were writing it and creating it, about the woman that you were writing it for. Like, what did you have somebody in mind? Some, like an avatar, I guess, that represents a bunch of us, but the woman that this is for.
Yeah. Thank you for asking that question. And that's really where my heart is, because without going into the whole long story, for me, I was doing a friend a favor and ended up helping teaching fitness classes. So I knew what to do. But my kids would come home from school and I'd get them a snack and I'd have a little bit of their Cheerios and their goldfish. And one thing led to another. And pretty soon I was having a binge every day at 4 o'clock. And I was very much like, I know what to do. I'm not doing it. Lots of shame, lots of guilt, and lots of imposter syndrome. Then we ended up moving to Guam because my husband was in the military. And so I felt very lonely and used food and alcohol to smother my feelings because I didn't have any other tools. And there was one night where it got out of hand. I had too much food, too much alcohol, woke up at 2:30 in the morning, presumably to get a glass of water and some Tylenol. And I went into my kids' room telling myself I was just going to check on them. But really, I went in there to punish myself because I thought maybe if I can be mean enough to myself, I'll finally change. And I said all the horrible things like, you don't deserve them. You're screwing yourself up. You're going to screw them up too. Your husband is embarrassed of you, like all the awful things. And just that shame, Amy, is so awful.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew in that moment, I was like, this is not sustainable.
Mm.
Something needs to change. And that's when I decided to stop dieting because dieting had gotten me there with all the rules. I was like, I gotta try something different. And so first of all, I just started asking, like, am I hungry? And so that in itself helped change my mindset. But I really dove into self-compassion and the nervous system and nervous system safety and figuring out why can I know what to do and not do it. And what I learned helped me understand that it wasn't that I was broken. It was that my nervous system, my brain was just trying to protect me from all the stress and the feelings. And that really lifted that just heavy blanket of shame. And that's why I write my books. That's why I coach, is for that woman, because I see so many women walking around with that big, heavy, awful blanket of shame. And I want to say, it doesn't have to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
You are amazing. You are a miracle. You have this light inside of you. And that shame is dampening it, is covering it up. And if we could just peel back that shame, you've already got what it takes, honey. You've already got it. It's already there. Let's just peel back what's holding you back. And so that also speaks to the sort of larger metaphor of my book, Light, which is it comes in different parts of you feel lighter through the light process, the light method. You see the light within yourself. And we talk about all of the obstacles like perfectionism and people pleasing and so forth. And so we begin to peel those back so that then by part 3, you can be light. You can be the light that you already are. It's just a matter of revealing what's already underneath.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Thank you.
And what do you hope that women take from your book when they're finished reading it? What do you want them to walk away with?
Whew. I want women to walk away with knowing that they are a light. Speaking to the person who's listening, is that you are a vessel of the divine, right as you are right now. There's nothing you need to fix. It's simply a matter of identifying what's in the way and pulling it back with compassion and love, and recognizing that it's not because you're doing it wrong. It's because your nervous system is trying to keep you safe. And so if you can understand that we need to create safety first and then walk through those obstacles gently and compassionately, we can reveal who you were meant to be in this world, which is you. You were here to be you. You are God's gift to the world because you are that one of a kind fingerprint of a person, and nobody else can be you.
Love it. Love it. And you're doing it, Lizzie. You're accomplishing your vision, making this difference for so many women, whether it's through the latest book, your first book, You Are a Miracle, your podcast, Confident Body. I mean, everything that you're doing is so much in alignment with what you're trying to accomplish. So thank you. Thank you for everything that you've been doing.
Thank you, Amy. I really received that.
Is there anything else that you would like to share with us today?
I was at a coaching conference this past weekend, and I was facilitating. But one of the things that we did was I was also kind of doing a role play to help demonstrate a coaching tool. And so I ended up getting coached on one of my own limiting beliefs, which I think is common to a lot of us, which is it's not safe for me to be fully me. Like if I really shined, if I really was fully just my weird, quirky, bizarre self, people would walk away. I'd be rejected. And you probably have experiences of that. And you have plenty of evidence for why that belief is true. And as we were walking through this coaching tool, my partner and coach in the moment, she was like, well, what's the opposite? And the words that came out of my mouth were, the safest thing I can possibly be is who God made me to be. And I just want to offer that message to you, to the person listening, that the safest and most beautiful thing you can be is who God made you to be. And I recognize that you probably have evidence and experiences of when that didn't feel safe. We all do. But is that still true now? And what could you bring to the world, to your life, to your family, if you stepped into a little bit being fully you? Because I think that's why we're here.
Wow, that's powerful. Thank you. Thank you, Lizzie. Thank you so much for being here today. It was so good catching up again.
You too, Amy. I love seeing you. I'm so grateful for our connection. And thank you so much for the opportunity to chat about my book.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of the Blueprint Breakers podcast, Why Smart Women Still Struggle with Weight Loss. And a very special thank you to my guest, Lizzie Merritt, and to you, thank you, the listener, for listening and sharing this episode with your friends. If you haven't done it yet, please remember to follow or subscribe, and please give us a 5-star rating on whatever podcast platform you are using. Have a great week. Keep on breaking those blueprints and rewriting your own.